the things you keep coming back to over time throughout your life are the things that you're destined for and are part of your life's purpose. Hello. Welcome back to the Ancient Esoterica YouTube channel. My name is Sarah, and if you're new here, what's up? We're happy to have you here on this lovely journey called life. So today I wanted to share a little bit about this idea that I just spoke on, that the things we keep coming back to are the things we're destined for, and they are a part of our life's purpose. And the reason why I feel like this is a important topic and idea to sort of contemplate as you're finding yourself, maybe you're at the beginning of a spiritual awakening, or maybe you've been having a spiritual awakening and you're really ready to step into your purpose or are looking to find your purpose. Well, as you contemplate all things purpose and destiny and life, I invite you to really reflect on the things that you keep coming back to over and over and over again, because they may play a vital part or be a major key, DJ Khaled, major key, maybe a major key to your destiny and your purpose. And so I will share a few personal examples to kind of explain what I mean here. So throughout my life, I've always been very, very passionate about similar things. And these passions, although they will kind of like drift in and drift out of my life, they've really been a staple of what I would call my life's purpose and my destiny. And these things are writing books. You know, I wrote my first book when I was 8 years old. And it's so funny, just thinking about this now, because I was so young and I instead of playing computer games, which I did do, I played The Sims, loved The Sims. But I would sit there and write these fantasy novels about things that I had no business really talking about, but I was so into them. My first book that I wrote when I was 8 years old, it was between age 8 and 10 because I worked on it for a while up until I got into middle school. But this book was called Distant Planet, and it was about these people from this distant planet that were coming to Earth, and the perspective of these teenagers, and it was just so cool about all these otherworldly, almost alien concepts. And if you know me, that is everything that I am into to this day at age 28, 20 years later, which is crazy. And then another thing would be the show Ancient Aliens, and you can kind of pick up on a common theme here. I, throughout my life, have been so passionate about otherworldly beings, ancient civilizations, call them aliens, these otherworldly beings, and just overall, it's always been something that piqued my interest, and I never knew why. And this passion is in these ancient civilizations, in these, otherworldly beings, in these fantasy realms. This fascination has always come back to me again and again. And now another more recent example would be, being an author, which did come from that past, from when I was a child. I always wanted to write books, write stories. But after my near-death experience in 2017, I knew I would write books. I just knew, that I would write a book. But as I progressed on my spiritual awakening journey, it became more and more clear that I am here to write books. I am here to write books. And I would put it on the back burner. I would kind of focus on other things, but I would keep coming back to that same idea. And now another thing that goes hand in hand with this book writing thing would be podcasting. So the idea to start my own podcast came to me in November of 2018, when I didn't even know what a podcast was, but I had just gotten literally one of these exact notebooks from the dollar store. I've called them my OOF notebooks. I've been getting these same dollar store notebooks forever. But I, in my notebook, wrote just at the top of the page, podcast, and nothing else on the page. And that idea was downloaded into my being, but it felt so resonant and felt so much like a part of my path. So I never really forgot about it. And then fast forward to, I'd say 2022, I discovered the Deja Blue podcast, hosted by Blue of Earth, a woman named Charlotte who lives out in LA. If you've heard of Blue of Earth, or the Deja Blue podcast, big fan. But I discovered Blue's podcast in 2022. And before then, I didn't really listen to or watch any podcasts. I had heard about them, like everybody's heard of Joe Rogan, you know, things like that, like Call Her Daddy, but I never watched any of them. Maybe saw clips, but never actually sat and watched a podcast until 2022 when I found Blues. And when I was watching it and watching these high vibrational conversations and these just podcasting in general with conscious souls and spiritual people, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember in 2018 when I wanted to start a podcast. And even in 2021, I tried starting this podcast with a friend of mine at the time. Even actually in 2019, I tried starting a podcast with a friend of mine as well. But it was like right idea, wrong timing, or like right intention, sort of like, yeah, wrong timing and wrong people. Not that it was like bad people, just I wasn't meant to have a podcast show with those people. So that idea of podcasting was seeded into my consciousness in late 2018, and I kept coming back to it again and again and again. And I kept becoming more and more passionate about these podcasts as time went on. And you could say the same thing about writing, about ancient aliens, these otherworldly civilizations, like these things that I keep coming back to over and over again. They are vital parts of what I would call my destiny and my life purpose. Because what I believe I'm here to do and to share is to kind of like bridge the gap from this old world matrix sort of crumbling world that is falling apart and dismantling right now, to bridge the gap between that old world crumbling and the new world, the new earth, the age of Aquarius, this, new world that's forming. Bridge the gap between those things. And in order to do that, we need to understand, well, what actually happened in our past? What actually did these ancients leave behind? And who are these otherworldly beings that pop up in all of our mythologies and ancient stories that we called gods or whomever? And so, even just that concept of like bridging the gap between the old world and the new world, I keep coming back to that idea again and again and again. And I feel like when I wrote this idea down the other day, it was because I had heard it in a podcast I was listening to. And someone mentioned, I don't remember if it was a podcast or a video, but someone mentioned the things you keep coming back to. The things that you can't get out of your head, that you keep, these ideas that keep popping into your head, but maybe you say, no, I'm not ready, or no, that's not for me, or no, that's too crazy. These things that keep cycling around, they are a part of our purpose and our destiny. And now another thing that keeps kind of coming up for me is being very passionate about collecting books and hopefully one day opening a bookstore. And again, this is one of those wild ideas that I keep kind of putting out of my mind, being like, yeah, okay, it's just a fantasy, it's just an idea, but it keeps coming back, and it really ignites this spark of passion within me when it does come back. So that tells me that there's something there for me. And so if you're listening, and if you're still listening this far into the video after I just tangented for 8 minutes, then I really invite you to look within yourself. What are the passions, the shows, the types of shows, TV shows, movies, media even, the types of media that you like to consume? Maybe you're drawn to documentaries, or maybe you're drawn to reality TV or cartoons or whatever. Usually we can kind of sniff out an underlying theme or a reason why we're drawn into what we're drawn into. And usually those things will play a role or have a little key piece in our destiny and in our purpose. And especially as we shift out of an era where we were mainly focused on productivity and getting that bag and getting that bread, making money and surviving. Well, as we kind of shift out of this era and into a new world and into new paradigms that are built on purpose and meaning and passion and fulfillment and real human experience, I really invite you to connect with, what are you most passionate about? really look back to your childhood and what were you drawn to? What games did you like to play with your neighbors or with your cousins or your friends? What activities did you like to do? You know, here's another freaking example. So I've always wanted to do a podcast, right? And like have my own show. Well, the number one game I made my cousins play with me, all my cousins, whether it was my New Hampshire cousins, my Wakefield cousins, you know, local cousins or far away cousins, I always made them play freaking news with me. Like we would set up my laptop, and this was mainly in middle school when I had like cameras and stuff, but ever since I got my first camera, digital camera and laptop cameras, I would set them up and be like, all right, let's do like a fun like news show, you know, like, and I would make them sit down and like film the news with me. But we would make it fun. Like it wouldn't be like, oh, in today's news this person was murdered and blah blah blah. No, it was like goofy, silly, like, oh, this person had the loudest fart or whatever. Like, but relevant, because still to this day, I don't know if you guys have seen my Ancient Esoterica news video, that is one of my biggest passions and is something that I would eventually love to do weekly or even daily when I have the space and the space for it, because I live with many people and it can be hard to sort of find that like downtime to do something that's so structured and organized as that. But again, you know, that same idea has come back to me over and over and over again. And even when I was younger, I loved getting all my cousins together and putting on like a show, you know, like making up dances. And I loved being the like behind the scenes show organizer. And whenever I've been around, you know, event organizers or planners, or I knew friends who were putting on an event, I've always loved to be behind the scenes. And that's like the role that I've loved playing. So you could say, what roles do you love playing the most, and how can you take them a little bit more seriously? You know, a lot of the times when we're tuning into our passions, or we're like, you know, playing news or playing show or whatever, we do it as kids because we want to like try on these things that maybe we feel passionate about and maybe we will want to pursue later. But then as we get older, we kind of get sucked into the matrix or sucked into survival mode, and we'll kind of like discount and put those ideas or dreams in the back burner. But you know, how can you tune into those childhood passions, the games you love to play, the shows you love to watch when you were younger and when you were really finding yourself? How can you tune into those and experience them now as an adult, and maybe imbue them into your purpose and into your, you know, your destiny as it unfolds? And I will say too, another thing, when I was in middle school and high school, as I mentioned in the beginning, I loved Ancient Aliens. And at the very beginning of my awakening, Ancient Aliens, the show, played the biggest, most pivotal role in my awakening and in triggering downloads to remember all this ancient wisdom that's encoded within my soul that I was destined to remember. And, you know, if I wasn't so passionate about Ancient Aliens when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have given it a chance as an older adult, because it gets belittled and made fun of and shamed so much. So trust the things you're drawn to, trust the dreams you have, the passions you have, and the things that you keep coming back to again and again and again, because they are a part of your purpose and they're part of your destiny and the roles that you're here to play on planet Earth in co-creation of this new Earth. And now we all have a choice at all times, and we can choose to play it small, to have everything handed to us, just stay in the Matrix game, play by the rules, play by the Matrix rules, you know, we don't have a purpose, we gotta just get that bread, get the bag, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's cool. If you choose that, that's fine. But if you're ready to dream a different dream, and you're ready to step into a new octave of being, then maybe reflect and look at, you know, what are the ideas or the passion projects or the dreams that keep cycling back into your consciousness, into your mind, that you keep either denying or putting on the back burner, or, you know, maybe dipping your toes in, but then going back to the real world. Well, from my eyes, the real world is fucking crumbling. It's a sinking ship, and if you want to go down with that sinking ship, go for it. But now's the time to take a leap of faith on your heart and your soul, and to kind of like, you know, try something different, because, you know, the worst thing you can do is fail. And to me, failure doesn't exist. So what do we even have to worry about? Because we only fail if we completely give up and let whatever hardships or challenges bring us down and turn us away from our you know, goal or passion or whatever. I'm starting to kind of tangent, so I'm going to wrap things up here. The things that you keep coming back to are part of your destiny and are part of your purpose. And if you're curious about connecting with that purpose, or you're sort of wanting some guidance or just someone to support you as you are stepping into your purpose, I offer a variety of services. I do Akashic Record soul readings that can give you a snapshot into your multidimensionality and who you are at soul level, you know, what your gifts are, starseed lineage stuff, like if you've lived lives on other planets, where your soul originates from, what star systems and races of beings, you know, starseed lineage stuff, what resonates for your soul, and so much more. So I offer those. You can check out my website, link is in the description. And I also do offer tarot readings, I do astrology birth chart analysis readings, and I offer mentorship. So the mentorship is sort of like, you have me in your corner supporting you as you're kind of making these transitions, and I can support you over text, over calls, and through any of my readings if you decide to book the mentorship. So yeah, check everything out on my website. Links are in the description, and I am sending you all so much love. I wish you the best of luck as on your pursuit of your purpose and your destiny, and namaste.